Hello viewers, welcome to Zoolofied. This is Dr. Deepika Jolaniya-Tomer, and in today's lecture we shall be discussing about cardiovascular system, that is circulatory system, in which we shall be covering blood. Cardiovascular system, where cardio means heart and vascular system means blood vessels or the conducting system. Blood contributes in homeostasis of body, which is a balance among all the organ system within the body so that the body can perform properly. Homeostasis by blood is done by transportation of respiratory gases, which we all know that oxygen and CO2, and transportation of nutrients and waste material, and also the transportation of hormones, which are chemical messenger to and from the cell. Along with this, blood also helps in maintaining the pH and temperature of the body. It also protects our body in several ways. That is by phagocytosis, by engulfing the disease causing pathogens within the body. Secondly, by producing antibodies, which also protect our body from the foreign invaders, and it also protect our body from excessive blood loss during accident or an injury. Cardiovascular system consists of three interrelated elements or components, which are blood, heart and blood vessels. We will discuss all three of them one by one. Hematology, where heme means blood and logy means study, is the study of bloods and blood forming particle and also the deformities associated with the components of blood. Physical characteristics of blood. Blood is denser and more viscous than water, and it is of slightly sticky appearance. Denser and more viscous than water, and also a slightly of sticky appearance. It has a temperature of 38 degrees Celsius, which is 100.4 degree Fahrenheit, which is 1 degree higher than the rectal and an oral temperature. Of blood is 7.35 to 7.45, which is basic, and the color of blood depends upon the amount of oxygen present in blood. Color of blood depends upon the amount of oxygen present in blood. If the amount of oxygen is high in blood, then the color of blood is bright red, and if the amount of oxygen is low, then the color of blood is dark red. Human adult male has 5 to 6 liters of blood in a body, whereas adult female has 4 to 5 liters of blood. Blood forms 20% of the body's extracellular fluid. It forms 20% of the weight of body's extracellular fluid. Next, the components of blood. There are two components of blood, which are blood plasma and formed particles. Blood plasma is a watery liquid or an extracellular matrix. It is watery liquid or a extracellular matrix in which all the formed particle or the protein of bloods are embedded. It forms total 55% of the total blood volume, whereas formed particle forms 45% of total blood volume. Formed particle consists of cells and fragments. Fragments are of platelets, whereas RBCs and WBCs forms a whole cell. WBCs are further divided into two categories, which are granulocytes and agranulocytes. On the basis of presence of chemical granules in their cytoplasm, granulocytes are of three types, which are neutrophils, basophils and eosinophils. Whereas agranulocytes are of two types, which are lymphocytes and monocytes. Now let's discuss each and every component of blood in detail, where first is blood plasma. As we discussed it earlier, that blood plasma forms in total 55% of the total volume of a blood, and it is an extracellular matrix in which all the blood cells or the formed particle or the proteins are embedded in it. It consists of 91% of water and 9% of proteins. All the blood proteins are found elsewhere in the body, but the proteins which are present in the blood plasma are called as plasma proteins, and these plasma proteins helps in maintaining the blood osmotic pressure. Which is responsible for releasing and taking out of the material from the blood capillaries. Hepatocytes, which are liver cell, are responsible for the synthesis of majority of plasma protein, which are albumins, globulins and fibrinogen. Fibrin or fibrinogen. These are the three plasma proteins which are synthesized by hepatocytes, and some of the blood cells also produce globulins, which are called as immunoglobulins or antibodies, which are responsible for protecting the body from foreign invaders. Antigen is considered as a foreign protein which is responsible for causing any damage to the body, like bacteria and fungi, which stimulates the production of antibody for the protection of body. And along with all these things, blood plasma also contains electrolytes for maintaining the blood pressure or blood osmotic pressure. Along with that, it also has some of the waste material like urea and uric acid, and nutrients to be circulated in the body. Next component of blood is formed particles, which we discuss consist of RBC, WBC and platelets. RBC and WBC comprises of a complete cell or a whole cell, whereas platelets are fragments of a cell. First we discuss RBC or a red blood cell. They are also called as erythrocytes. Erythrocytes, which in its cytoplasm consist of oxygen carrying pigment called as hemoglobin, which is an oxygen carrying pigment. Due to the presence of hemoglobin in the cytoplasm of RBC, its main function is to circulate the respiratory gases within the body, mainly oxygen, and it also circulates some amount of CO2. Adult male has 5.4 millions of RBC in a microliter of a blood, whereas adult female has 4.5 millions of RBC in a microliter of a blood. Now the anatomy of RBC. RBCs are biconcave, and due to this biconcave structure of RBC, it is able to transport more and more oxygen to the body because it is able to accommodate more and more hemoglobin molecule within its cytoplasm. And along with that, RBC has flexible plasma membrane so that it can easily squeeze out within the vessel of a narrow diameter. Plasma membrane of RBC consists of different glycoproteins, and these glycoproteins are called as antigens, which account for the presence of different blood groups like ABO blood group and RH blood group. And also RBC does not have nucleus, and also it does not have any of the organelle like mitochondria or endoplasmic reticulum, so it produces its energy anaerobically. Because it does not have mitochondria or any other cell organelle, and it also does not use oxygen which it transports. Due to the absence of nucleus in an RBC, it does not able to synthesize the ruptured or damaged organelle, or it does not divide or reproduce further. Hence the lifespan of RBC is only 1 to 20 days due to the absence of nucleus. As we discussed before, that cytoplasm of RBC consists of hemoglobin. So this hemoglobin molecule within the cytoplasm of RBC is synthesized before the eradication of, or before the cell becomes enucleated, before the cell becomes enucleated in the red bone marrow itself. Next category in formed element is WBC or leukocyte. WBCs are called as soldier of the body, and they have nucleus and don't have hemoglobin in it. As we discussed before, that on the basis of presence of granules in the cytoplasm of WBCs, WBCs or leukocytes are further divided into two, which are granulocytes and agranulocytes. In granulocytes, the granules are more prominent, so they are easily visible in the presence of a particular dye. Whereas in agranulocyte, they have a very small granules which are not visible even if they are stained with a particular dye. Hence, they are called as agranulocyte. Granulocytes are further divided into 3 types of cell, which is neutrophil, basophils and Xanophiles. And agranulocytes are of 2 types, which are lymphocytes and monocytes. Granulocytes forms total 70% of the WBCs, whereas these only form total 30% of the total WBCs amount. In agranulocyte, neutrophils are most abundant cells. Most abundant cells are neutrophils, whereas basophils are less numerous. Lymphocytes form total 1/4 of the total agranulocyte, whereas 2 to 3% of the space is occupied by monocytes in a total WBCs. Among all 5 types of WBCs except lymphocytes, all the 4 types, that is neutrophil, basophil, eosinophils and monocytes, show amoeboid movement. These cells shows amoeboid movement, which helps them in the process of phagocytosis, that is engulfing the foreign particles, whereas lymphocytes produce antibodies and antitoxins. There are 3 types of antibodies produced by lymphocytes, which are agglutinins, which clumps all the bacteria together so that it does not develop further. Next is bacteriolysin, which rupture or damage the cell wall of a bacteria, and third is opsonins, which prepare foreign particle or a disease causing particle for phagocytosis. Except lymphocyte, all the leukocytes are formed in red bone marrow, whereas lymphocytes originates in lymph nodes. Here, just to correct myself, monocytes are present in 2 to 10% of a total volume of a leukocyte. Let's discuss the granulocyte and agranulocytes in detail. First, the neutrophils. As I told you before, that among the granulocyte, neutrophils are the most abundant cells, and even among all the WBCs, neutrophils are more abundant cells. Neutrophils, the number of neutrophils are increased in some of the bacterial infections, and neutrophil has small size granules which are uniformly distributed in all the cytoplasm of neutrophils. The nucleus of neutrophil is multi-lobed nucleus. It has 3 to 4 lobed nucleus like this, and as the age of the neutrophil increases, the number of lobes increases, and due to this different morphology of a nucleus, of neutrophil, they are also called as polymorpho nuclear neutrophils or WBCs. Next is Xanophiles. Xanophiles has large and uniform size granules which are dyed with red and orange acidic dye. Nucleus of Xanophil is bilobed and their number increases in some of the parasitic infection. Now we come to basophil. The granules present in basophil are of round and of variable size, whereas Xanophil has an uniform size granule. Basophil has round and variable size granules. Their number increases in allergic reactions in a body. Next is agranulocyte. Agranulocyte too have a granules, but their granules are not visible under the microscope because these granules are very small and due to their poor staining property. Hence, this category of WBC is called as agranulocytes, which consist of lymphocytes and monocytes. Now, the lymphocytes have round shaped nucleus and the number of lymphocyte is increased in some of the viral infection and also in some leukemias. Now let's come to monocytes. Monocytes have kidney shaped nucleus, and the cytoplasm of monocyte gives a cloudy appearance due to the presence of azerophilic granules which are nothing but a lysosome. The number of monocytes increases in some of the chronic diseases. This is all about WBCs. Now let's discuss platelets. Third formed particle of an blood is platelets. Hematopoietic stem cell of an red bone marrow also forms a cell which give rise to platelets in the presence of hormone thrombopoietin. Myeloid stem cell in red bone marrow give rise to megakaryocyte colony forming factor, which further give rise to megakaryoblast and which then forms megakaryocyte, which are huge cell, and in this megakaryocyte then split up into fragments, and when these fragments are enclosed in a plasma membrane, they form platelets. Now in red bone marrow only megakaryocytes form a small fragment. Then these fragments are enclosed in a membrane and converted into a platelets, and these platelets are then circulated or released in the blood circulation. These platelets have a diameter of 2 to 3 micrometers and they also don't have a nucleus. Hence their lifespan is just of 5 to 9 days. Cytoplasm of platelets consists of certain granules which have a proteins which helps in blood clotting, during an injury or an accident. Hence, platelets helps in an excess of blood loss during the accidental or an injuries. Number of platelets in an organism occurs between 1.5 lakhs to 4 lakhs. That's all for today's lecture. Stay tuned for more lecture. Till then, subscribe Zoolofied and support us by liking and sharing our videos. Thank you.